Duffy of San Quentin from 1954 starred Paul Kelly as Prison Warden Clinton T. Duffy at San Quentin State Prison, and loosely told the story of his time there and the reforms that he brought at this prison and the impact that it had on the lives of the inmates. Let me give a quick spoiler-free overview of the film, and then I'll offer some closing thoughts. And what can I say? I'm just a nut for a good 1950s-era prison film, especially one that features cinematography by legendary John Alton. So let's take a look at this one, shall we? So as mentioned, Paul Kelly plays Clinton Duffy, the warden at San Quentin Prison. And this is a loosely based story on his life and how he was only initially supposed to serve for like 30 days as the warden, but ultimately ended up there for many years. And we learned about how Duffy brought about various prison reforms, like abolishing the stool pigeon system, he improved the food there, he got rid of solitary confinement, and so on. His struggle here isn't just with these hardened criminals, though, but he also had to deal with corrupt guards as well. So Duffy is there, he's trying to bring about some positive changes, but things will really start to pick up when the character of Edward Romeo Harper arrives. He's played here by Lewis Hayward. Now, he's considered this troublemaker and irredeemable. He's been in solitary and so on. But Duffy seems interested in helping Romeo reform, and the two begin to gain a sense of trust with one another slowly. At one point, a small group of prisoners attempt a breakout, but it's shut down by Romeo and some of the other inmates who actually seem appreciative of the positive changes that have been brought about by Duffy. Well, Duffy assigns Romeo to work in the infirmary with some of the other prisoners, and it's here where things get interesting, as Duffy hires a female nurse, the character of Anne Halsey, played by Joanne Drew, who maybe it's just me, but I thought somewhat resembled a young actress Janet Leigh. Well, Duffy's plan is that she will be there to help build the morale of the men. But it seems like there are some complications, maybe things won't actually work out after all, and she nearly quits when she realizes that it seems like Romeo might have fallen for her. Well, anyhow, a little bit later in the film, a crooked and very cocky prosecutor named John Winnett arrives. He's played here by George McCready. Now, he's been convicted of bribery and put behind bars. Now, this is interesting, as it is believed that this corrupt lawyer was the one who put Romeo and many others unjustly behind bars. Duffy is warned by the prison commissioner that Winnett's life will be in great danger on the inside, and this could put Duffy's job in jeopardy if anything happens to him. And Winnett, who's this arrogant character, he's expecting special treatment, but Duffy decides to stand on his principles and assigns Romeo as Winnett's cellmate and bodyguard. Well, how will all of this work out? Well, no spoilers. You really need to see the exciting conclusion for yourself. So some closing thoughts here. Duffy of San Quentin was directed by Walter Doninger and was released by Warner Brothers in 1954. The screenplay was written by Doninger and Berman Schwartz and was based on the book The San Quentin Story by Clinton T. Duffy. My thoughts on this one was that it did a really good job with telling the story of Duffy, but doing so basically from the perspective of one particularly hardened inmate. So the story isn't all just about Duffy, but it's a lot about this guy on the inside and how the reforms impacted him. And I really like seeing the transformation of Lewis Hayward's Romeo character. How initially he's this defiant, angry, and calloused character, really not trusting Duffy at all. But through the course of the film, and following some of the many opportunities he's given, seeing him change, it was just really fascinating to me. In a lot of ways, his story is the highlight. I thought the atmosphere of this film was excellent. I love a good prison film from this era, particularly when it gives you that sense of dread and uncertainty. You never really feel like there's any safety inside. And it always felt to me like the Duffy character was just seconds away from getting jumped by one of the inmates or from a bitter former guard. There's just that atmosphere that hangs over the film, and I love that. And as mentioned, the cinematography was by John Alton. And you can see his signature all over this one. You know, the dramatic angles for some of the inmates' faces, giving them that sense of dread, or the inky shadows. There's a sequence in the film I found jarring and very artfully done, was when the character of Winant, you know, this haughty attorney, he's brought low, he's in lockup, and Romeo is there to boast out loud about his new cellmate. And one by one, the lights of the prison just shut off, and the scene fades to black. I mean, it's brilliantly done, and just gives you that hopeless sense of doom for this lawyer. And it also just embodies, you know, the fear of dread that I think we all have, not just of being in lockup, but if you're in lockup and knowing that everyone there wants you dead.
It won't happen today. It won't happen tomorrow, too quick and easy. But it'll happen. Boys! We're on it! Juan has decided to join us! We're cellmates! You hear me, boys? Juan has decided to join us! We're cellmates!
So I really enjoyed Paul Kelly as the warden here, and appreciate how he wasn't depicted as a superhuman, you know, who just arrives, he demands changes, and instantly sees results. But rather we see that he is a flawed character. He's got doubts, he's got uncertainties about himself. He questions if he's doing the right things. And he finds support and encouragement from his wife, played here by Maureen O'Sullivan. And yes, it's the same Jane of the Tarzan series with Johnny Weissmuller. You know, me Tarzan, you Jane. Yeah. Well, Kelly's portrayal of Duffy is tough, but deeply humane. He believes in the humanity of the men of San Quentin. He listens to them, and he treats them with respect. And this is a big part of how he brings about his changes there. Now, a fascinating and somewhat dark detail is that in real life, actor Paul Kelly had actually spent 25 months himself in San Quentin during the 1920s as a prisoner. He was convicted of manslaughter for the death of actor Ray Raymond. The two had been in a big fight that ended terribly. Raymond was the first husband of actress Dorothy McKay, and McKay was having an affair with Kelly, and they would later get married. She was charged as an accomplice in Raymond's death for withholding evidence, and was also imprisoned for 10 months. So, knowing this going into the film, to me it added an element of realism to this character, while also kind of casting a shadow over him as well. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like knowing that detail about his past, that he had killed a man in a fight, kind of adds an element that's just a little bit darker to his character. Well, The Steel Cage was another movie that was released in 1954, and this used some unused footage and outtakes from this film with Kelly and O'Sullivan, and also included some new footage that they filmed with other actors. And it served as basically a sequel to this movie. And I actually found that one and reviewed it a few months ago on my channel. So I'm kind of going backwards a little bit. So there's kind of two films that work together, but they're both very good. So a few quick thoughts, and I'll wrap up the review. The film also features a very young Joe Turkel, who plays the character Frank Roberts. He's one of those actors that I see in a film, I think, where do I know him from? And go and look it up, and yeah, it's Dr. Tyrell from Blade Runner, of course, just younger. And check it out. This film has one of the very first and very briefest roles ever for a young DeForest Kelley, Bones of Star Trek. You know, he's literally in the film for like 10 seconds, I think. Darn it, Jim, I'm a doctor, not a police detective. And a final note before I close. I have to comment on the movie poster for this one, as I often get a chuckle looking at some of the old movie posters from this era. Looking at this one, this does not look like Lewis Hayward, but I think it looks more like Pee Wee Herman stuck in prison. I'm a loner, Daddy, a rebel. Now look, Duffy of San Quentin may not be a blockbuster. In fact, it's a hard film to find, and when researching it, there were only a handful of reviews for it. I don't think it's a very well-known film, but it's still a solid piece of 1950s crime drama. It's got some excellent filmmaking involved, namely Walter Doninger's direction and John Alton's cinematography. Paul Kelly's calm, authoritative presence really gives a somber, serious note to the film. And Lewis Hayward's Romeo character, watching him slowly transform through the film, was fascinating to me. The story keeps enough tension to really keep you interested as you're stuck inside this prison. And I loved seeing when that corrupt attorney, the character Winant, shows up, expertly played by George McCready. The performances were all great in this film, and we get a positive look at the life of Warden Duffy of San Quentin. This was a great prison film, and I think it's one worth checking out.